Cuba's leader, Fulgencio Batista, was a brutal dictator. His people were turning against him. After years of guerrilla fighting in the mountains, a charismatic 33-year-old lawyer, Fidel Castro, entered Havana on the 8th of January 1959. More secure within his own country, he sought to export revolution to the rest of Latin America. Alarmed by this prospect, America kept up the pressure on Castro. In the spring of 1962, a practice invasion of a Caribbean island was mounted by 40,000 American Marines.
We did that purposely to make Castro pay more attention to that than causing trouble in Latin and Central America. But the Cubans and the Russians, they told us later, believed that the United States really did intend to attack Cuba, and therefore Castro kept saying, "I need some help."
Castro's pleas inspired the Soviet leader Khrushchev to make a daring offer. He had boasted to the world of Russia's nuclear strength.
I immediately appreciated the strategic importance of the presence of those missiles in Cuba. By that time, the Americans had already transported similar missiles to Turkey. I thought, if we expected the Soviets to fight on our behalf, to run risks for us, and even involve themselves in a war for our sake, it would be immoral and cowardly on our part to refuse to accept the presence of those missiles here.
In July 1962, under the nose of the Americans, the first of 150 Soviet ships, loaded with heavily disguised nuclear missiles and over 40,000 troops, sailed for Cuba. CIA agents in Cuba reported that Russian troops and missile trailers had been seen in the streets of Havana. Washington dismissed the reports as rumor.
I saw those weird weapons, and then I said to my friend Pablo, "Pablo, how powerful are these weird weapons?" And he answered, "These are nuclear missiles." So I thought, oh, really powerful. They just put them here, out in the open.
But the CIA had noticed the increase in Soviet ships heading for Cuba. On October the 14th, a U-2 spy plane was ordered to fly across the island to try to discover what was going on. The next morning, the Photographic Interpretation Center in Washington started analyzing the pictures that the U-2 had taken.
We're looking at the photography, and we spot objects that are foreign to the environment. And we kept looking, and we said, this is an SS-4 ballistic missile site.
The Navy would stop and search all ships heading for Cuba. They called it a quarantine. But in case the quarantine didn't work, preparations were made for airstrikes, and a massive American invasion force was made ready. The American fleet now encircled Cuba. The Soviet ships stayed on course. With confrontation imminent, Kennedy wanted direct contact with Moscow. He sent his brother Robert to meet in secret with the Soviet ambassador. Nerves were being stretched to breaking point. People tried to prepare for a possible nuclear holocaust. A wave of panic buying swept across America. For the first time in its history, America's Strategic Air Command moved to Defense Condition 2. The next step, DEFCON 1, would be war.
A war appeared imminent. A first strike might take place at any time. I said to myself, if Cuba is in such an unfortunate war, we will disappear from the map.
On October the 26th, with tension increasing, Kennedy received a telegram from Khrushchev.
The most important paragraph in it is, Mr. President, Mr. Kennedy, you and I are like two men pulling on a rope with a knot in the middle. The harder we pull, the tighter the knot until it will have to be cut with a sword. Why don't we both let up the pressure and maybe we can untie the knot?
Khrushchev went on to offer that if the United States declared that they wouldn't invade Cuba, the necessity of the presence of our military specialists in Cuba will disappear.